Welcome to the Wild Paw podcast with me, Karen Wild. Today I speak to well-known pet body language artist and illustrator Lili Chin. Thank you so much, Lili, for joining us on the podcast. It's really great to be able to talk to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Karen. Thank you for inviting me.
I feel like we've known each other for ages and we've never really met, have we?
Yeah, thanks to the internet and Zoom technology, we can now see each other.
Well, this is the good news about, there are some good things to the pandemic, aren't there? We've all been forced online to do video conferencing, which some of us have done a little bit of, but I don't think any of us have really done it to this extent, have we?
No, and I'm sort of learning how to prop up the camera and set the lighting right and not terrible.
So how are you managing? I mean, let's talk about this and get it out of the way, because it's obviously a big part of what we're all doing right now is, this lockdown situation. So obviously you're living where you are, we're living where we are. There's very different government rules about things. So what's the lifestyle like with you guys at the moment?
Okay, so in Los Angeles here, we are in lockdown. We're probably going to be in lockdown until mid-May. All essential businesses are closed. It's very hard to get tested from what I hear. There's still not enough tests available. So we do have to stay home and wear masks when we go out in public.
Yeah, so here it's not well, obviously we're staying home. We haven't got a mask rule yet, but I know over there every governor has something slightly different, don't they? So it's kind of, I have another friend in LA and funnily enough I haven't spoken to him for a while, so maybe I should look him up. So let's start talking a little bit about you. So obviously I would say that you are the lady behind the illustration. So it's something that I would see an illustration, I would know straight away, oh, Lili drew that. That's one of Lili's. And then, sort of this characteristic style that you have. And obviously I'm a fan, so I'm going to butter you up a bit. But I really do think that, I think I said it on a podcast the other week and I was talking about one of my books, but someone said, about illustrations and I was like, well, no one can illustrate like Lili. She picks out the emotions really well. So what I wanted to ask you, I think first of all, is how did you get into doing what you do? Because I know you do a variety of things, but it's animal related and emotion related, isn't it?
Well, it's personal. This all started when, first of all, I'll backtrack a little bit. I mean, I was doing pet portraits to begin with. Like I worked in animation and I left that world and I started doing illustrations of people's dogs. And what happened was that I adopted my dog, Boston Terrier. He was about 3 at the time, and he bit somebody soon after I adopted him, and I had no idea what to do. So it was very traumatic because I almost got evicted from my home from the landlord because he bit the building manager.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, I can laugh about it now, but at the time I was devastated. I was asked to move out and get rid of the dog. So I hired the first dog trainer I found on Google, not knowing any better. And I was watching the Dog Whisperer show because that was all I knew and that's what everyone talked about. So I hired a dog trainer, put him on a prong collar and insisted that he wear it 24/7. And if he so much as looks at somebody else or looks at another dog, I have to correct him. I took him to a boot camp. It was so the short story is that he got worse. He became more terrified and aggressive of people. And I was at a loss at what to do. I didn't know that there were other methods or that wasn't, I didn't know that this was outdated dog training. So I did a lot of research on the internet and read books and read Karen Pryor and, all those books. And I connected with positive reinforcement based dog trainers and started, switch trainers. And then things which, I tried clicker training. I bought a clicker. I started using treats and he blossomed. Like he just became a new dog. He was so happy. He was, he's not perfect, but he was a lot better. And as I was learning about how to train my dog, I was told to look out for body language, and I read Turit Rugas's book. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the name correctly. And I watched the videos, and it just occurred to me that nobody knew any of this. Like, nobody talked about it. Like, the Dog Whisperer show certainly didn't give any of this information.
No.
Yeah, and so I started illustrating my dog training lessons in a blog. Like, I was doing Grisha Stewart's bat as well, so I was illustrating all these little things, and what I learned today, and Grisha contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm doing a book. Would you be interested in illustrating my book?" Because she saw my illustrations, and that was kind of how it started.
It's funny because that's how I remember you, is the association with Grisha and the initial sort of posters, because although we talked about these things and it was ongoing, I think, in the dog training movement, no one had ever really visualized it like that. At least I don't feel like they did.
Yeah, well, not that I know of. I couldn't find anyone else doing what I was doing at the time. And I contacted Dr. Sophia Yin because I was reading her blog, and I was so amazed by everything she was doing. And I said, "Hey, do you need an illustrator?" And she said, "Sure." And she started hiring me to do her I think we did a little video of how not to approach a dog and all those things. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I still love those as resources for my clients. I mean, they don't date, because let's face it, body language and that kind of communication has been going on for forever, hasn't it? Dogs have always communicated like that. It's just us didn't really seem to articulate it very well. We may perhaps have understood it, I don't know, or misinterpreted it, certainly. I just wonder about that. Why do you think that is, that we, because obviously dogs have always done things, and had emotions and stuff. Why didn't we pick up on it before? Or did we, and we just never expressed it?
I really don't know. I think well, in my case, I just didn't know to look for those things, like the lip licks and the head turns and the eyebrows. I just never saw them. I didn't think they meant anything, so it didn't register as being important, or being like communicative of what the dog was feeling, or what my dog was feeling. Like, when you learn that these signals mean something, and you learn, then when you notice them, you can't unsee them after you've seen them. It's just, I think, up to that point, you may not know it means anything.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, one of the things that I have to do when I'm talking to my clients is to try and introduce the concept of it without letting them blame themselves for not spotting it before. So they would say, "Well, I didn't see it," and then the dog will do it right in front of them, and they kind of say, "Oh, they just, and they just did it." And it helps if we commentate it a little bit, and then they maybe start feeling a bit guilty because they didn't know that that's something, and they've probably had their dog for many years.
And it happens quite quickly too. Like, I took a video of myself playing with Boogie the other day, because like I did this workshop with Amy Cook. She does this playing with your dog workshop, and she said, you should video yourself so you can see clearly what your dog is feeling as you. And I played like the video, and there were all these lip licks that I just didn't see. Like, I mean, they were so fast. So I think it's also like, it requires practice, I guess.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's like any language skill, isn't it? The more you do it. Certainly watching a video back. I mean, obviously with the lockdown and everything, I've been doing a few more videos myself and videoing things for my clients and doing classes online, and I watch them back, and I'm standing wrong, my hand's in the wrong place, my timing isn't right, my dog sneezed, so I didn't even notice that he sneezed because I was giving him a cue at that point. And I obviously trainers are, we're nitpickers, that's what we do, but I nitpick my stuff, and then I think, well, now I know that now, and I'm going to look out for that next time, and I won't angle myself that way, and I won't, and I feel like I should know my dog, or all of my dogs. I had them for a long time, but even then I feel like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So putting that emotion into images. I mean, you mentioned you were doing animation, so I guess that is all about expressing a kind of a movement or a feeling, isn't it? I mean, I don't know a lot about animation.
So one skill I guess I get from animation is that when you draw a character in animation, you have to make them move. So it takes a lot of drawings to make a movement. of the same character. So you learn to draw the same character in many different poses. So I guess I kind of had that background.
Yeah, very useful.
I'm assuming that helped. Yeah, and also I live with my dog, so I see him all the time, and drawing him is, it doesn't require that much effort.
I mean,
But I do get requests from people to, like I have clients saying, can you do some dog body language poses of a different dog, like their dog, for instance, and then I will need photo references because, the way my dog looks when he's doing a certain signal might not be the same.
Well, that's something I was going to ask you, because I mean, we'll talk about your forthcoming book in a moment, but one of the things that I was curious about was how you decide what breeds to draw. And the reason I was interested in that, because I know you've done cat stuff as well, but it's always been said, and I think it's probably less so now, but it was, if it's a cat, you can just pretty much draw a cat, but if it's a dog, it's got to be a specific breed. Now, I think that's quite well known, and I think now that people are getting more into cats and cat breeds, that's going to change. But certainly, as you say, there are certain signals that you'd see in a dog with, I don't know, pricked ears that you would not see in the same dog, like a spaniel with very long ears, and that the signals are subtly different. And I noticed in your book you mentioned about folds of skin and how they can mask things. So how do you make that decision on which dog are you going to draw?
It was completely up to me. The publisher said to me, just can you do as many dog breeds as possible? And that was the note I got. I mean, originally they wanted me to do a book of just a book version of my doggy language poster, which was all Boogie, my Boston Terrier. And then I submitted the proposal, and they got back to me and said, we're thinking it might be better if it was different breeds. Can you do as many breeds as possible? So, and I thought that was a good idea because, Boogie doesn't have a tail, his ears are upright ears, and, so I thought that was a really good opportunity to show different breed traits, how they communicate.
Do you think that some breeds give a more sort of a gift of signals than others? I mean, is that I'm not breedist as such, but obviously we over the years have selected out these dogs to look like they do. So,
I don't know if I'm an expert enough to be able to answer that question. I don't know.
I just have this concept in my mind that there are certain breeds that I work with that just seem to give off loads and loads and loads of signals, and then others that are a little bit more quiet in their body. I don't know. I mean, you're the one drawing them, not me.
I don't know. I guess it depends on the dog, right? And their history, and whether I know, like, my dog is he's like a nervous type. He's kind of a shy, kind of stoic, doesn't express a lot type of dog. I mean, he does to me, but compared to other dogs, you would think he was hard to read.
Right, I get it. Yeah, and I think that we, I mean, certainly in my job, I deal with the dog in front of me, and that's a sample size of one. But it's almost like when you're trying to produce it in a picture form, that's more difficult, isn't it, to communicate like this is an example of, and the people might just look at it and go, well, that dog doesn't look like my dog, so therefore, do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think that would be a problem?
No, I don't. Well, I don't think so. I don't know. I come across lots of different attitudes in my clients, so they would quite often say, oh, this is a typical such and such Labrador, Spaniel, Terrier, typical. And we train ourselves not to label as much as possible. But I know just from my own experience of picking dogs out for my own book, it was kind of like, we want an every dog on the cover. So what is that? So that's kind of what I'm getting at, is if you're trying to display, this is what this dog is feeling.
I mean, I just don't think it's possible to have an every dog. I mean, what is an every dog?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean,
4 legs, tail, ears. That could be anything. It could be a horse, So I think that I also think that people tend to have a type, and they have like a, and I'm generalizing about people here, but I do think that when we're trying to communicate a bit of information to someone, they've got to be able to relate to it. And one of the reasons I liked your book was because there is a huge selection in there of,
Yeah,
and also the progression of some of the emotions. So in some sections, I say we will talk about the book a little bit more, but you've got like one type of dog doing different things throughout the
yeah,
pages, so you can see how that body shape
yeah,
changes and what those eyes are doing, and
yeah,
and there's so much nuance in just, I might say just a line drawing, but they're not a photo and they're not a video and it's
yeah.
not an animated image. So how do you know which bit to pick? How do you do that?
Um, well, okay, well, I've done so many body language charts over the years that I know what dog trainers ask for, and so I kind of went with the, I guess, the most common ones that people talk about. I mean, I also, I had reference books to work with, so it's not like I knew all this information or I made anything up. Like, I mean, I've referred to the Barbara Handelman book and Brenda Aloff book, and um, I guess I wanted to have a section in the book that looks at the whole body, and I thought that would be a really good way to show how the whole body changes, and it's not just eyes or ears or tail. It's the whole silhouette. That
So
makes sense.
we've sort of touched on it, so let's have a little sneaky talk about the book that's coming out. So it's not due out, I know, temptingly but awfully, until October this year,
Yes.
and tell us a little bit about it. I know that we'll almost certainly meet up again and celebrate that it's actually out, but I want everyone to get a little taster. So what tell us a bit about it.
Okay, so it's a book on dog body language. It's how to read dog body language, and it is written for everybody, like not anyone who's not an expert, anyone with a dog, and it's got all new artwork of different dog breeds, and the book is divided into chapters. So you're looking at ear positions, eyes, mouth positions, tail positions, and whole body movement, like with little how shall I say it, little arrows and words to point out what to look for in the drawing. So it's quite a simple book. Like, I mean, there are not a lot of words in it. They're mostly pictures. And there's a section on like commonly misinterpreted sort of body language, kind of like when a dog is lying down. They're not in a vulnerable position with their belly up. Like, there's different meanings to that. Like,
Yeah.
they could be terrified and sort of frozen, or they could be wanting a belly rub. So things to notice that can help you tell the difference.
Yeah. What I thought was quite useful, actually, because there's tons of dog books out there and they're all appealing to different audiences, and some books are very text based. But I
Yes.
think what we're talking about here and what we're trying to get across, I think, with dogs in general is that, they don't have language, but they do have communication and they have emotions, and that's quite normal. That's not new. It's completely normal.
Yeah.
And to be able to use a book as a tool, like the sort of infographics that you produce, so that we've got something that we can actually show somebody on a page, not a photograph of someone else's dog, but an illustration of an emotion of a dog is what it that's the first impression that I got. The minute I saw some of the pages that you sent to me, it was like, okay, I can imagine talking to a client or them
Yes.
looking at this and going, okay, yeah, I know exactly what you mean now. But they didn't have to read a lot. They could just see it straight away. That was my impression of it. Is that what you were after?
Thank you. I'm really glad to hear you say that, because yay.
Yay!
Yeah. Because that is my goal, to make it easy to see. Because when you look at a photograph, there's so many things happening, and then somebody has to break that. If you're trying to communicate what that dog is saying in the photograph, you would have to break it down anyway. So this is what I'm doing, breaking it down with a drawing.
Yeah, and that's a tricky thing to do. I mean, I went to a Sue Sternberg seminar a few years ago, and I thought, well, I know a lot about body language, and I'm going because it's the second day and she's here, and I just really enjoyed the first day that we did, and it was really good. So I just booked to go to the second day just out of curiosity, and she was using slow motion video. And there was so much there. It was unbelievable. I mean, there were so many extra bits and pieces, and that nuance is very hard to capture, I think. And I think it's hard to get that in an image. and that's something that I've always said, is that interpreting things is important, but knowing, like you say, the whole dog, not just looking at the waggy tail or not, or the, you know, the blunt
Yeah.
instrument version. So in terms of the sections of the book, so you've got obviously misinterpretations. What other bits did you really highlight in there that you felt sort of that needed to be said?
Well, for example, eyes. I kind of like the bit about eyes, like, you know, soft eyes, hard eyes, and mouths as well. I think mouths getting misinterpreted because dogs have teeth, and I think people get scared when they see teeth and they assume that it's all aggression when it's not. And that's where you kind of have to look at the whole body and look at the ears and the tail and everything else to know what that mouth means.
So where do you start when you've got, you know, in your mind you think, okay, I want to convey what this dog is doing right now, which bit do you start with? How do you compose an image like that in, you know, in illustrative form? What do you do?
I'm not really sure how to answer that. I mean, I guess I start with the feeling, I guess, the context, a common context and response from the dog, and I use that to as an example. Yeah. So like in the stress, there's a chapter on all stress signals. So I was very I wanted to make sure people saw this as a contextual experience for the dog. Like there is something that is happening that the dog is responding to, and it's not just, it just doesn't come out of the blue for no reason. So I hope that comes across in the book.
I think that, you know, that context is very important, and something that certainly we have to convey in my job when we're talking to owners, because they will say the dog was unpredictable or this behavior
Yeah.
came out of the blue, and you know, it's not our job to flatly contradict them. I mean, that's not how you get people to sort of change behavior, but it might be talking about what led up to it. And I sometimes try and get them to visualize it. So, like I said, it's much easier to hold an illustration in front of them and go, oh, was it kind of like this, you know, or and to have that feeling that we do have that deeper understanding, but that the signs are, they're all there, aren't they? So
well, I'm hoping the book will be useful to dog trainers, because I mean, this is just an introduction. It really is just like tip of the iceberg. You know, I'm hoping that people will look at these images and then it's a starting point for a conversation about a real actual dog that's in front of you. Yeah. I mean, it won't be to give you everything. It's just like a good start.
But then, I mean, there's a level that people would like to reach, I think, of bonding with their pets, and so much now, you know, they've always been part of the family, but I think more than ever. And that whole what do you think about that, the whole sort of humanization of dogs and bringing them into the family? Do you think is that a good thing? Are there drawbacks?
Well, I have it here right now. So he lives with me. He's like one of my, I mean, I consider him family. So, I mean, I guess I would say it's a good thing.
It's almost like, I think it's perhaps sometimes it's taken too far, where people will imbue a dog with characteristics that they might not have, you know, or an ability to understand things that they perhaps don't. And that goes beyond, I suppose, beyond their body language, but it's definitely part of interpreting what they mean. And I noticed in the book you said about the eyes when the dog might be hungry or trying to get some food off you, or people might interpret that as a guilt response.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting because I actually got a publisher note today asking me if that's an innate response or if it's up to the individual dog, or would you say all dogs know this? I thought that was an interesting question.
Would know what
like,
whether it was
when a dog looks at you with the eyebrows raised, like that, those puppy eyes, they want to know if that was an innate response. And I said, no, it's not. We train it. We reinforce it. We give food, we give attention, and then they learn to do it.
Right.
So
Okay. It's
like, and similarly, like, I mean, I didn't go into this in the book as much, but the guilty look too, it's like, you know, they're expecting punishment. I mean, something bad happened in the past, so you get that look.
yeah, they don't necessarily know exactly what it is that they've supposed to have done, you know, 10 hours
Yeah,
ago when they got left,
yeah,
you know, with the
yeah,
sofa and, you know, the curtains all pulled to pieces. And yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's still something that people certainly mention to me when I'm helping them. And the other thing is the idea of that dogs might be somehow spiteful. You know, they deliberately toileted there because they knew it would upset me. That kind of concept is like,
yeah.
wow, really?
Well, you know, I did, you know, there was a time many years ago when I thought that when, you know, I had a foster puppy that pooped on my bed, and I was so convinced he did it on purpose on my bed. Like, he could have done it anywhere. Why did he do it on my bed?
Well, I mean, there is a
Yeah,
reason. Somewhere there's a reason, but it might not be the one that we think it is, you know.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, imagine if they did have that level of intent. I mean, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but, you know, wow, that would be pretty worrying.
Yeah.
So, how did you? So, you mentioned about Boogie and how you know, you'd started off with one set of training. What made you switch over to the other training? Was it just, you know, what was it?
Well,
What triggered that?
I well, first of all, I felt really uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable correcting him on that collar because he he would scream.
Oh,
Um, he screamed the first time he got corrected on the collar. He screamed, and I looked at the trainer and I said, like, horrified, you know, like, my dog is in pain. And she just looked at me and said, "It doesn't hurt. He's just being a drama queen." Um, anyway, so yeah. And then there was another time that she asked for a down and he wouldn't do it. He just sat there and he wouldn't lie down. So she pushed him and like pinned him down on the ground. And she said to me, "Okay, you do it now. It's better if you do it because I don't want him to bite me." And so anyway, there were all these moments that were just kind of uncomfortable, and he was getting worse as well. Like, he became much more subdued and scared of people and nervous around people. He was quite a friendly dog before, and then he just became really shut down and just seemed kind of depressed. So I started reading, and I felt like there has to be another way. I mean, I can't go on with this. Like, you know, I need to find out. So I wrote to a column on the internet, a dogster.com column, and that was kind of how I met Grisha, because Grisha was answering questions. And I said, "Hi, you know, I'm seeing a dog trainer for aggression. Boogie's wearing a prong collar, and I'm correcting him, and he's becoming obedient, but I don't know how to make him like people again. But I don't
yeah.
understand how this is going to make him like people." And Grisha's advice was get rid of the prong collar and look into counter conditioning, desensitization, look into, you know, positive reinforcement and bat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what kick-started me into looking for new information.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And that feeling of discomfort, I think, is a completely natural response. And isn't it interesting how if somebody is there saying do this, we override
yeah,
that feeling of, well, doubt, because, well, they're the expert and maybe I've seen it on
yeah,
TV and this should, you know, this should work because I'm being told it's the right thing to do. And, you know, it's a
yeah,
fallacy. I mean, you know, it's if you feel like I would quite often say to people, if you're feeling uncomfortable about doing this, then you need to stop doing it because your emotions are right. You know, your gut feeling is right.
yeah.
You can't
But there's,
argue with that.
yeah, I mean, there's also the peer thing. Like, if you have other friends who use prong collars who correct their dogs that way, and they say, "Oh yeah, yeah, I do that with my dog," and then I felt like, okay, there's an expert telling me to do it this way, and now I've got friends who are doing this way. Then I guess I should do it this way,
Yeah.
even if there is a better way, you
But
know.
that's the whole thing about influence, isn't it? And the sphere of
Yeah,
influence and conformity. You know, so if everyone around you is doing something, it's completely normal to assume that that's the right thing to do. The
Yeah.
fallout is widespread, actually, because everyone will get the same fallout to a degree, but whether they continue with it or not, I don't know. I mean, it's a really difficult one to counter, and good for you for sticking with your, you know, your gut feeling, really, and seeking out the other knowledge, because it's clear that that's developed into something quite amazing for you.
Yeah, I mean, who knew? I had no idea it would come to this, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just illustrating that you do, is it? You do other things too. You have an online store, and you do
Yeah.
other.
So I do create prints, and have pins, enamel pins made, and I have little gift products that I have made that I sell in my online shop, and that's on Etsy.
Oh, it's an
But
Etsy shop. What's your Etsy shop called?
it's doggydrawings.etsy.com.
Okay, so people
That's
can
the
find you. People can
but
find you and come and buy your things.
yeah, then my website there will be a link to the shop too. So.
And what's your website address?
It's doggydrawings.net. That's DOGGIE drawings.net.
Oh, so that's nice and easy to remember. I don't have to spell that one out properly.
Yeah,
So
it's
if
yeah,
you
a
had to
GG1.
pick, so, you know, obviously, generally, I think that dogs have there's a huge variety, and what we're dealing with, you know, like I say, is the dog in front of us, and we've got our own
Yeah.
animals, and then you've got everyone else feels the same about their own animals, and hopefully, but for you, what if you had to pick, like, maybe one or two things that are the most interesting thing about a dog for you, what would those be?
Well, how how they listen to us and how observant they are. They're just so smart. They're so attentive and so yeah. I mean, it's kind of a cliche to say dogs are loyal, isn't it? But I mean, it's sort of like they are really. I mean, they really live with us. I don't know. That's like one big thing.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you picked that, because I think that loyalty, I think it is a cliche, but I think it's misinterpreted again. I think it seemed to be this subservience, and I do think dogs could be a little bit like that, but I don't think that I think they do it because that's what we've kind of engaged them to do to a degree. They, you know, they want
Yeah,
to be a part of what we're doing because, you know, we've deliberately chosen for that to happen over and over and over and over again over many years, but
yeah,
not necessarily in a mastery way, but in a friendship sort of way. I don't know.
yeah. That way. Yeah,
Friendship, family.
I guess, I'm thinking of cats as a comparison.
Mm.
A cat will be very different. Like they just do their own thing, but dogs are so much with us.
And a lot more tolerant, aren't they, generally? I mean, I know you can get
Yeah.
all sorts of dogs that are intolerant and cats that are tolerant, but as a
Mm.
general rule, if a cat puts up with someone touching it for a couple of seconds and then scratches you, you know, then people say, well, you know, it's a cat, what do you expect? Whereas if the dog does it, it's kind of like, what, a dog shouldn't do that, why is the dog doing that? And there's this sort of horror
Exactly.
reaction.
Yeah.
So is that
And they're very,
something that, oh, sorry, carry on.
yeah, as you were saying, they're so misunderstood. And that's quite sad that they're so misunderstood. Like all the things that are normal for dogs to do that we don't accept.
And the good news is, though, I think that certainly over my years of working with dogs, and I mean, I started over 20 years ago when that kind of training style we didn't have prong collars. I mean, I'd seen one, but I'd never seen one being used. We used like choke chains, you know, and it was, you know,
Yeah.
that was kind of the de rigueur. Everybody used a choke chain, or what we call a half check, which is a choke chain with a cloth thing, which are still around. I mean, they are still being sold, but very much frowned upon, like, generally, I think. Not, and I don't just mean within the dog training fraternity. I think, you know, people look at them as they feel a bit uncomfortable about them, you know.
Yeah.
Perhaps not so much where you are. Certainly prong collars here, I'm generalizing, but I don't see them. I might see the
That's
hidden
okay.
ones, but the full
That's
on.
Yeah, because I see a lot of them here, especially in LA. I don't know, maybe it's this town. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
but they
but it could be that conformity thing again, couldn't it, that other people use them, so, you know, they're there in the shop.
yeah.
They're quite scary devices. I think they look absolutely awful. But I you know, I certainly remember the time where all of that was given plenty of justification, you know, and it was
Mm.
this is how dogs need to be treated. You know, if they're not treated like that, they are going to be dangerous. But then you look at all the variety of dogs that are out there and you think, well, you know, this seems a little bit inaccurate because, you know, that this is an older style training method that appears to work and appears to be used on certain groups for certain reasons, but now we're using them on dogs that are, you know, just sort of, you know, sitting in the house all day, and you know,
Yeah, yeah,
that kind of thing changed very gradually. I mean, I don't, you know, different methods for different trainers, and I obviously have my own preference and other trainers have theirs, but I certainly felt a lot more comfortable not having to show a client, oh, well, this is how you yank a dog to stop it pulling, because I just felt like I don't like what I'm seeing and I don't like what I'm feeling. And,
yeah,
but we didn't have the wealth of information we have now. Do you see what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm really glad, you know, that I backed away from that. For me, it was Ian Dunbar, who sort of changed my attitude and, you know, taught me an awful lot more. And I'm so grateful that we've managed to come on with those things. I mean, you obviously had the experience with Boogie, and, you know, I certainly had experiences with my older dogs. I'm so glad that we're where we are now, aren't you?
yes. But I mean, do you think that the message still needs to get out more to more people?
Yeah, I think
Y-
so.
y-
I,
Yeah,
I
the more,
definitely, I mean, I obviously, it's easy to get into sort of strong opinions about things, and I do come across occasionally the fallout from other trainers where, you know, that those methods have been used and they've, you know, been ineffective or whatever. And I, you know, that's not saying that we all get it right all of the time either, but I think
mm,
ultimately we're there to protect the welfare of these animals and to make sure that
yeah,
we treat them in a way that is appropriate. And I think that's my bottom line is, you know, there are so many choices that you can make before you get to that stage, just as
yes,
you know, Dr. Susan Friedman will say, you know, the roadmap of the, you know, where
yeah,
we introduce different things. I, I think that it's not saying that this method works and this method doesn't work. It's saying,
yes,
but of all the choices we have, we could choose
yeah,
this first, you know. And if the
yeah,
dog is telling us, you know, they're physically telling us, like you able to communicate in a drawing, this is what the dog is telling you they are thinking
yeah,
right now, then we
yeah,
might make different decisions and different choices for them.
yes. I mean, I did Dr. Susan Friedman's course as
Oh, did you
well.
do LLA?
Yeah, I did
Living and learning with
LLA.
animals. That's brilliant. Big plug for that. Absolutely brilliant,
Yeah,
isn't it? I loved it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I learned so much. Like, I mean, it was all those little bits and pieces. You know, I've been getting over the years about behavior, how behavior works. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it all came together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sort of big fan of how she manages to express things very calmly and very simply, you know, and
Yeah,
that breaking things down into just a simple stage. You know, this is the stage of this is the stage of this is the
yes,
consequence for that. That's it. You know, there isn't much more to it than that. I think is another massive tool that we can communicate to people that probably don't need to know all the dog nerdery that we get
yeah.
into.
Oh my, there's so much dog nerdery.
Isn't
Yeah,
there just, I love it, I'm terrible, and gadgets and all these different things. It's like, oh, a new thing that's supposed to do such and such, and then you look at it and then it's
yeah.
probably just the same thing again in a different color, you know.
Well,
And
well, what I'm interested in is like doing more infographics, like doing more like charts and posters about this geekery, this nerdy dog stuff, but in accessible language. That's
yeah.
kind of what I like. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I mean, when I was doing like being a dog, one of the things that we were looking at was doing writing the text from the dog's point of view, and having
Yeah.
more illustrations, not anything like what you were doing, sort of more variety of different bits and pieces for that to illustrate the text, really, rather than what you're doing, which is like, here is the image, and the text is
Yeah.
just explaining a little bit of what you can see right in front of you.
Yeah.
But I think that was important because people, they genuinely want to know, don't they? They want to understand. And some of our information that we're getting is a little bit, you know, too detailed, or people just feel like they can't access it. So giving them that tool of just saying, here it is, I think is really useful. I personally, I can't wait to see your book out and about. I want to, I want to wave it under everyone's nose.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
excited.
So
Yeah.
I think what we'll definitely do is catch up again, sort of in a few months' time, when I think I said to you before, we'll all be in a very different place, won't we?
I hope better
Mentally,
place. Yeah.
I definitely think that at the moment things are, just like nothing we've ever experienced, are they? And it's hard to
Yeah.
refocus on our work. But then I'm dealing with people that are saying, well, my dog's really struggling because we're all at home now.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
But I thought there was a meme going around that dogs are happy that people are at home all
I
the
would
time.
say, well, some dogs are, but I also think that there is, dogs do need an awful lot of sleep, for example, and there's somebody who's feeling emotional about, quite naturally, about the situation that's going on, and they might perhaps be using the dog as a bit of a prop for that emotion, and then
Oh,
the dog
okay.
can't rest because someone's kind of going, oh, stroke the dog, and certainly with the children being at home all
Oh my.
day.
Uh,
I'm not saying they're doing anything teasing or mean, not at all. I mean, I literally think that dogs have, they're very good at routine, aren't they? Generally,
yes.
they they're very affected by contrast. So this has all happened fairly suddenly, and I wonder if it's, for some people and some dogs, the fallout from that, particularly those dogs that are more sensitive to who's doing what
Right.
in the home. And
Yeah.
they're not robots, are they? I mean, we kind of, this
Yeah.
whole discussion is about how they aren't. So I do
Yeah.
think that they are experiencing an awful lot more disruption than we realize, perhaps in cases
Yeah.
where, and they can't get out, they can't get away. I don't know about where
Yeah.
you are. Do they have limit on exercising them over there at the moment?
No, no. I'm still going out and walking my dog
Hmm.
the normal schedule.
Okay,
Nothing.
that's good.
I mean, we just have to wear masks and keep a 6 feet distance from other people.
Yeah, yeah. So of course the
Yeah.
next wave is when everybody goes back to whatever normal is going to be. I don't suppose we know, so we'll have to, that might be an interesting project to sort of think forward to, is how we can support people, with that
Yeah.
coming, and try and get them to understand that, again, this could be a rapid change for the dog and they may not cope with it particularly well. They might be a huge sigh of relief, you never know.
I'm seeing the sort of little ads on social media as well about how to counter condition your dogs to masks, like because everyone's going to be
Yeah,
wearing masks, and that could be really terrifying for the
right.
dogs. Like,
And also, don't
yeah,
forget, the smell of hand sanitizer must be significant for them. I'm not saying like we have to use it, of course, and washing your hands more often means that perfume soap, they might be used to it, but they're probably not used to the kind of level that we're now introducing them to. And hand sanitizer
yeah,
in particular, I think, is a big, you go to stroke the dog and they look at you like, what is that thing? Because they're just not used to
yeah,
it, and it must
yeah,
stink, I mean, for them. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to get inside their heads, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, it's a whole new world for them. People, smells, so much more to have to process in their environment. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Lily, for giving us your time today and for coming on for the interview. It's, I've wanted to speak to you like
Thank.
this for a very long time. So I'm really glad that we had the time to do it. I really hope you'll join us again later on in the year when your book's out, and we can talk about how exciting it is. And as I
Yes.
say, we'll have a lot more information about what, nobody's got a crystal ball and we don't know what's coming over the next few months, but your book will be out, we will be reading it and showing it around everywhere. And thank you again for joining us. It's been absolutely lovely talking to you.
Thank you, Karen. It was lovely talking to you.